بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. He says باب الوضوء مما غيرته النار. He says wudu after eating something which has been altered by fire, i.e. during cooking. So this might sound very strange to us because perhaps you never heard of any Muslim ever eating cooked food and then making wudu because of it. It's a bit strange. Um, that's because it was abrogated. That's because it was originally the case, right? And anything that's abrogated and was originally the case, naturally, you're going to find that some Muslims were aware of the fact that it was abrogated and some Muslims were not. And so you're going to get debate, right? And so this is part of this process that we're seeing with the former dhahib, is that one of the many things that the former dhahib do is cut out fringe opinions. There was a debate among the Sahaba and Tabi'een, the early Muslims, but that was such a fringe opinion that the former Dhahib cut it out. It's not strong. It didn't survive the process of shifting and editing out in the next generations, and so it disappeared because of its weakness. Like temporary marriages that existed in at one point of Islam, then it was abrogated. And then it was debated, are temporary marriages valid, are they not valid, etc. It took a while for people to get the clear picture. And then you see, for example, the former Dhahib agree that you cannot have a temporary marriage. It doesn't exist. That's something that the Shia do, etc., etc. But it's for Sunni Muslims, no, that's not part of the deen. That was abrogated, right? And many other things, right? So here, Imam Malik mentions this because there is a debate, right? He's not introducing the idea. The idea is already there in the scholar's mind or the student's mind. He's saying, listen, you have heard about this debate, but let me tell you how it is. You do not have to make wudu after eating something that's cooked by fire. So he says, أخبرنا مالك حدثنا وهب بن كيسان قال سمعت جابر بن عبد الله يقول رأيت أبا بكر الصديق أكل لحما ثم صلى ولم يتوضأ. So he mentions with the chain transmission, he says that Abdullah Jabir ibn Abdullah, the Sahabi, said, I saw Abu Bakr as-Siddiq eat meat and pray, and he did not make wudu. So there we go. He ate cooked meat and he didn't make wudu. But what's interesting here, is he quoting the Prophet ﷺ or is he quoting Sayyidina Abu Bakr?
Sorry, is that your question again?
Who is being quoted here? Or who's being used
Siddiq?
as a proof? Is this actually a hadith? Is this a word or action of the Prophet ﷺ?
No, it's Sahabi.
Sahabi, correct. So why are they mentioning him? What does that tell us? That tells us that for Imam Malik and for the early Muslims in general, what Sayyidina Abu Bakr or Sayyidina Umar did is almost like a hadith, right? The other Sahaba, when you put it together, it's like a hadith. But with Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, we're frequently going to see Sayyidina Umar did this, therefore that's the deen. Sayyidina Abu Bakr did this, therefore it's the deen. Again, are you going to find that in Shi'i Islam? No, they're not going to have that. So you're going to find, for example, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, he's the one who kind of codified or organized Taraweeh. Do Shi'is have Taraweeh? No. Okay. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he's one of these people who clamp down on temporary marriages. Right? They have temporary marriages, we don't. Okay? There's many issues like that. Okay? Sayyidina Umar, he's the one who said, if you have a slave, female slave, and you have a child with her, then she's free once you die. That's it. Everybody tended to agree on it. Amr al-Sha'bi, he said, when you see the Sahaba disagree, and you say Umar says something, just follow that. Right? So you see generally across the madhahib, Hanafi, Shafi, everybody, when Sayyidina Umar or Sayyidina Abu Bakr does something, it's kind of like done and dusted. Now, why is that the case? That's for a number of reasons. Number one, he's a Sahabi, okay, who's alive after the Prophet ﷺ, so he was going to be privy to different things that the Prophet ﷺ did And so being after the Prophet ﷺ, he saw the Prophet ﷺ do this, Prophet ﷺ do that. And when he does something, you can see that he's kind of weighing the things up. That's A. B, there is something very unique about the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar, is that all the Sahaba were in one place. So Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Abu Bakr, they could ask the Sahaba, and the Sahaba could correct them. So had they done something wrong, the Sahaba who knew about the halal and haram from the Prophet ﷺ would have corrected them, right? And similarly, they would ask the Sahaba's advice, what do you think? And they'd all say something. So what happens then is that the fact that all the Sahaba were in one place, they're all in Medina at that time, they're all there, that it's very easy to create ijma', to create a situation where all the Sahaba agree on one thing. And if they all agree on one thing, that's the deen, right? Because it's consensus. Whereas at the time of Sayyidina Uthman, the Sahaba are more spread out. Time of Sayyidina Ali, even more spread out. And then after that, even further spread out. So it's very hard thereafter to get all of the Muslims in one place and say, guys, what do you think about X? And they all agree, right? How easy would it be to get all the scholars today and have them all express unequivocally their opinion on Bitcoin, for example? It's quite difficult. So you could say things like, many modern scholars say this. Most modern scholars say this. But when you say all scholars say this, that's quite difficult. How did you even ask all scholars? Right? Whereas at the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar, it's much easier to kind of ask that question. Okay. So anyway, so he's saying here that he did not make wudu. And then he continues, he says, أخبرنا مالك حدثنا زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار عن ابن عباس أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أكل جنب شاة ثم صلى ولم يتوضأ. So Imam Malik takes from Zayd ibn Aslam, from Ata ibn Yasar, from Ibn Abbas, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate a portion of sheep and then prayed and did not make wudu. So there we go. So isn't it interesting that this comes after that? Right? It's interesting the way he put it in order. It's kind of interesting. Why didn't you put the hadith first? It's interesting. Then he says, أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا محمد بن منكدر عن محمد بن إبراهيم التيمي عن ربيعة عن عبد الله أنه تعشى مع عمر بن الخطاب ثم صلى ولم يتوضأ. He said, Malik informed us that Muhammad ibn al-Munkadir informed us from Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Taymi, from Rabi'ah, from Abdullah. Which Abdullah is this? I'm not sure which Abdullah this is. Abdullah ibn Umar? I'm not sure. That he took his evening meal with Umar ibn Khattab and then prayed and did not make wudu. Right? So therefore you do not have to make wudu for eating cooked meat. أخبرنا مالك أخبرني ضمرة بن السعيد المازني عن أبان بن عثمان أن عثمان بن عفان أكل لحما وخبزا فتمضمض وغسل يديه ثم مسحهما بوجهه ثم صلى ولم يتوضأ. So Malik said from Zamrah ibn Sa'id al-Mazini, informed them from Aban ibn Uthman, from Uthman ibn Affan, who ate meat and bread, then rinsed his mouth and washed his hands, wiped them off over his face, and prayed and did not make wudu. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري قال سألت عبد الله بن عامر بن ربيعة العبدي عن الرجل يتوضأ ثم يصيب الطعام قد مسته النار أن يتوضأ منه قال رأيت أبي يفعل ذلك ولا يتوضأ. So Malik informed us saying Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, the Qadi of Medina, asked Abdullah ibn Amir ibn Rabi' al-Adawi. So why is he asking? He's asking because it's a question. So again, repeat. Uh, as time goes on, difference of agreement becomes less and less and less because fringe opinions get edited out. Okay? Fringe opinions get edited out. So here's an issue of a question for them. For us, it's not a question. No one's going to even discuss this. He says about a man's making wudu, then eating from food which fire has touched, whether he should whether he should do wudu due to that. He said, I saw my father do that and he did not make wudu. And he says, أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا يحيى بن سعيد عن بشير بن يسار مولى بني حارثة أن سويد بن النعمان أخبره أنه خرج مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عام خيبر حتى إذا كانوا بالصهباء وهي أدنى خيبر I believe خيبر صلوا العصر صلوا العصر ثم دعا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بالأزواد فلم يؤت إلا بالسويق فأمر به فثري لهم بالماء فأكل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأكلناه ثم قام إلى المغرب فمضمض ومضمضنا ثم صلى ولم يتوضأ. Malik informed us saying, Yahya ibn Sa'id said that Bushayr ibn Yasar, the freed slave, the Mawla, the freed slave of the tribe of Banu Haritha, said that Suwaid ibn Nu'man told him that he went out with the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu in the year of Khaybar. Then when they reached As-Sahba, which is the nearest part of Khaybar, they prayed Asr. Then the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu called for the provisions and nothing was brought except sawiq, which is a meal of cooked grains. So they feel like fried grain or something like that. He gave orders and it was mixed with water for them, and the Messenger of Allah ﷺ ate and we ate. Then he got up for Maghrib and he rinsed his mouth and we rinsed our mouths. Then he prayed and did not make wudu. He says, قال محمد وبهذا نأخذ لا وضوء مما مسته نار ولا مما دخل إنما الوضوء مما خرج من الحدث فأما ما دخل من الطعام مما مسته نار أو لم تمسسه فلا وضوء فيه وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله. So notice how now Imam Muhammad is going to give us a principle, right? A system. This is how the Kufans work. They have a system. Imam Muhammad says we adhere to this. There is no doing wudu due to eating from what fire has touched, nor from its entering the body. Wudu is only necessary by the exit from the body. There's systems, something exiting the body. So as for the entry of any food which fire has touched or has not touched, there is no need to make wudu as a result of it. This is the verdict of Abu Hanifa. Notice it doesn't say وَالْعَامَ قِبَلَنَا, right? Or وَعَامَةُ الْفُقَهَاء قِبَلَنَا. It doesn't say and the majority of our scholars. Now, you'd imagine it is the majority of their scholars. He doesn't mention it. Okay, another discussion. So again, what is the context? As somebody living of their time, you are hearing this, some people saying, you have to make wudu if wudu, water that is shared between a man and a woman is not, you can't use it. Okay, and he is going to say, no, it's totally fine. He says, أخبرنا مالك حدثنا نافع عن ابن عمر. This is the golden chain. Right, Malik from Nafi', the freed slave of Ibn Umar. Right, he says, كان الرجال والنساء يتوضؤون جميعا في زمن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he said, Nafi' narrated from Ibn Umar that men and women used to make wudu together in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now this hadith is problematic, right? Why is it problematic?
Because together could mean different things.
Right. So is it possible that men and women both made wudu at the same time in front of each other while they're making like that?
Yes.
So what's going to happen when a
I
woman
mean,
she's going to have to roll up her sleeves, right?
yeah, yeah.
And for the majority of scholars, right, they say also she's going to have to take her socks off or at least expose her feet, right? Now, is it possible that all men at that time lowered their gaze? It's also possible. So the very important thing to explain, to understand, that as society gets worse, the fiqh of gender interaction becomes stricter. Okay? As society gets worse, the fiqh of gender interaction gets stricter. Okay? So it is number one possible that the Sahaba were literally making wudu at the same time, men and women, but the men were so engaged in worship and so careful that they never looked up, and that's it. Women just knew that men will look away, and that's just how it is, right? And then what you find in the time of Sayyidina Umar is presented with a situation like this. And Sayyidina Umar, he there was a big pool and men and women were making wudu there. And he said, split the pool in half. Split this thing in half, men on one side, women on another side. Right? Notice how the Prophet, how Sayyidina Umar is reacting to a new generation. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, if the Prophet knew what women did today, right, in the next generation, then he would have banned women from going to the mosque. So women went to the mosque at the time of the Prophet. Generally speaking, fuqaha, you find they don't recommend women go to the mosque, right? So what happened? Women and men used to interact in one way. With the degradation of society, they said, you know what? Forget it. People go to the mosque to check people out. People go to the mosque specifically because they know so-and-so is coming or etc. They're going to go and talk to this guy or he's going to go talk to that girl, whatever it happens, right? And so notice the strictness we're going to see, okay? The Shafis, they say, originally the Shafis, they said, a female slave does not have to wear hijab. Later on, they're like, of course she has to wear hijab. Why? What happened? Society changed, right? Society changed, right? And so this is a very important thing to understand, right? Originally, the Malikis are not talking about niqab, and then you'll find some, for example, Baghdadi Maliki saying, yeah, women have to wear niqab. Why? Because suddenly it's different, right? The world is a different place. People are different. Degradation of society. I just want a beautiful quote here on the degradation of society. It's just interesting. I'm just trying to find it here. But it does help us understand things because sometimes people say, well, the way the Sahaba did things are kind of chill. It's like, it's a big deal, right? But it's like, yeah, that was a case. That was a time when people had deen. Okay, so this is a quote from Sari as-Saqati. He said, Al-Jariri, the students of Junaid. He said, تعامل القرن الأول من الناس فيما بينهم بالدين. He said the first generation of people, they interacted, their basis for the way they interacted with people was the deen itself, meaning the fact that your ego has to submit to Allah and is submitted to the Sharia. That's number one. He says, حتى رق الدين, until the deen became very weak. ثم تعامل القرن الثاني بالوفاء. And then the next generation of people, they dealt with each other with loyalty. We don't have deen, but at least we can be loyal. حتى ذهب الوفاء, until loyalty disappeared. ثم تعامل القرن الثالث بالمروءة. And then the third generation of people, they dealt with each other by the fact that people were too ashamed to do something that was low. Right? That's a low thing to do. So just, you don't have it in you, but it's like, that's just a low thing, right? حتى ذهب المروءة, until self-respect and not wanting to do low and vile things left. ثم تعامل القرن الرابع بالحياء حتى ذهب الحياء. And then the fourth generation of people dealt with each other on just the mere awkwardness and the fact that it would be too embarrassing to do shameful acts and talk to people in shameful ways. حتى ذهب الحياء, and then people have no more shame. ثم صار الناس يتعاملون بالرغبة والرهبة. And then people started to deal with each other by being forced and being enticed, right? If you do this, I'll pay you. If you don't do this, you're going to go to jail, right? If you do this, right, I'll pay you this. If you don't do this, I'll take this money away from you, right? So it's a very different type of world, right? Where you have to, let's say, for example, in Saudi, where they used to have, for example, the religious police, they would go around and force people to go to the mosques. You have to go to the mosque. I'm forcing you, right? It's like, if you know, I'll fine you if you don't do this. I'll do it, right? And this is not really, it's not the same anymore, right? So first it's deen, religion itself, and then at least being loyal to each other, and then being having some self-respect. Like, that's where's your self-respect? How could you do that, right? I'll just give you an example of self-respect. When the Prophet ﷺ was given bay'ah to, they had they had what is it? Giving bay'ah to the Muslim women. All right, somebody who's new Muslim, she's free. I can't remember her name. I think it's Prophet ﷺ's, one of Prophet ﷺ's aunt. I can't remember her name now. He said, I'm making a pact with you that you do this and do this and you don't commit zina, right? And she's like, "Awal hurratu tazni ya Rasulullah." He says, "Would a free, respectful woman, would she commit zina, O Messenger of Allah? Like, why are you even saying that to us? Right? Make sure you don't commit zina, right? That's a strange thing to say. Like, why would you even say that to us? Right? As if that's a thing that we would do, right? So like we'd have like self-respect, just cultural norms stop people doing that. Like, why forget deen, right? Um, until people, it's just, well, if you do this, your hand's gonna get cut off. If you don't do this, this is gonna happen, right? May Allah protect us. So it's important to understand that, because otherwise sometimes things seem either really, really strict, like some fuqaha say things that are really, really strict, and it seems like strange. It doesn't really reflect that kind of like looseness of the Sahaba, right? And why is that the case? Is because they had akhlaq, they had character. You don't need to go through details of fiqh with certain people who have character. Let's say, for example, somebody who is deeply immersed in the prayer. You do not need to talk to them about what it means to move too much in prayer. Whereas somebody who is not focused at all and continually pulling out their phone in the prayer, scratching their head, look, turning around, you now have to go through a bunch of rules. Say, well, if you turn around, it'll break the prayer. If you move your hand this many times, it'll break the prayer. They're like, okay, thank you. Because otherwise, they're not, it's not when the spirit disappears, you then have to start bringing a bunch of rules. Okay, so anyway, it's possible as well that no, they weren't making wudu at the same time, but rather they made wudu together, meaning everybody used the same water. There was a big pool of water and everybody used the same thing, i.e., if a woman uses some water, it does not affect the water, don't worry about it. قال محمد لا بأس بأن
Sorry,
تتوضأ.
Ustad.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Nasir, is he Qalun and Warsh teacher?
No, it's not the same, no, it's not the same Nafi. That
Oh,
Nafi is later.
ah, oh, okay.
That Nafi. Um, That Nafi is later. He is um, um, yeah, so this person is, he died something about like the same time as Imam Malik, a bit before him. That's Nafi. That's a totally different one.
Okay.
Yeah. He's originally from Isfahan, so he's Persian. But this is the freed slave of Ibn Umar, it's a totally different person. he studied with similar people. Mm, Abdul Rahman ibn Hurmuz al-A'raj. There's a similar kind of generation, but that's yeah. So he's going to be around. He might have been around this, and he's like a generation after him. So that Nafi is a generation after this Nafi.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So then he says قال محمد لا بأس بأن تتوضأ المرأة وتغتسل مع الرجل من إناء واحد إن بدأت قبله أو بعد قبله أو بعد أو قبلها وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله. I said Imam Muhammad said there's no harm if a wife, a woman should do wudu or ghusl with the man, with a husband from one pot. It doesn't matter, right? With his husband or wife, or it doesn't matter. Point is, a woman has put her hands in this pot of water. Does that change the water that I can't use it? The answer is no, right? Now, the Hanbalis, in reality, they have a scenario like that. The Hanbalis, they say that if a woman submerges herself in water, you can't use that. That's slightly different. So if a woman submerges her body in water, you can't use that water to purify yourself, right? But otherwise, the majority opinion is that it has no effect. Whether a woman uses it or not, it doesn't matter. Right? So again, you can see this process here of so now somebody comes along and says, well, I find a hadith to indicate this. Okay. So you can say, well, the Malikis don't say that. They've edited that out. The Shafis, they've edited it out. The Hanafis, they've edited it out. And the Maliki, the Hanbalis, they have a position like that, but they mean this. So this is why it's very, very important, is that every single Muslim is a Salafi. Every single Muslim wants to follow the understanding of the deen that the Salaf had. But your way to understand the fiqh of the Salaf is through the Khalaf. Your way to understand the fiqh of that early original deen is through the understanding of the late scholars. Because otherwise you're going to end up making mistakes. You're going to understand something in an incorrect way. You're going to do something the wrong way, right? So if you want to become Salafi, the way to be a real Salafi is you study fiqh of the former dhahib, okay? You understand one system properly, and that helps you transcend the rigidity or the fakeness of an artificial system to become something beyond, right? So it's a bit like the following. Somebody wants to be a martial artist, okay? And it's like, now put your foot here and put that foot there and punch like this, no punch like that. It's very artificial, right? When you're learning a martial art, it's kind of like, it's not like fighting. But then as you get more into it, you understand the system, and then it transcends beyond do this and don't do this. And it becomes like a system. And then you might actually work out that you want to change the stance a little bit, or that there's another kind of punch that's more important, etc. So so you might develop another martial art. For example, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that comes out of Jiu-Jitsu, right? If I'm not mistaken, right? Or another form of karate or another form of kung fu or whatever it is. But the point is you graduate from a system and you see beyond, right? And then it becomes more natural, right? But you have to go through the process, right? Because otherwise you're going to end up looking at a hadith, looking at a quote of a Sahabi, realizing that, hang on a minute, none of the former dhahib agree on this. And then you're going to jump onto it. Say, no, no, it's okay. I see the hadith and I see this. I'm going to follow it. And then turns out this is wrong, right? Because so the key thing is, one key thing is number one, you study the former dhahib to learn systems. Number two, you study the former dhahib to guarantee that you're not following something that is fringe and weird and off, right? Many people that say, I don't care. Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveal the form of dhahib? No, he didn't. He didn't deal with that. That doesn't exist. What are you talking about? Just Quran and Sunnah. That's true. But the form of dhahib are these systems that have resulted from the fiqh of the Sahaba and Tabi'een that edited, the one, have systematized the Quran and Sunnah, and two, edit out fringe opinions that you might fall into. Right? You might fall into and end up following something that's crazy. Next discussion is al-wudu min al-ru'af, from a nosebleed. It says أخبرنا مالك حدثنا نافع عن ابن عمر, right, golden chain. أنه كان, and notice here is not even going to quote this, right. Here at least is quoting at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He is not even quoting a hadith. Just saying, because again, for Imam Malik, this is what he said. I couldn't care less. Imam Malik used to say, if Nafi' quotes Ibn Umar, I'm not interested in anything else, because the Maliki school is effectively the Ibn Umar school. Like he had a lot of love for Ibn Umar. Ibn Umar is the son of Umar ibn Khattab. He is the brother-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ. So anything to do with fiqh of the outside, how courts work, rulings, and these kind of stuff, Sayyidina Umar is going to know it, and Ibn Umar is going to know about it. Anything to do with the household things that are private, Ibn Umar is going to know it from Hafsa radiallahu anha. أنه كان إذا رعف رجع فتوضأ ولم يتكلم ثم رجع فبنى على ما صلى. Right? Ibn Umar, what would he used to do? He says, if he used to have a nosebleed, he would go back and he would do wudu. And then he would not speak and go back to the prayer and build on what he previously did. So this tells us a number of things. A, that a nosebleed breaks the wudu. Okay? And B, that if you break the prayer in the middle of the prayer, you can make wudu and continue from where you left off. That's called bina, right? Bina, building. Is that you finished two and a half rakats. You were in sujood of you finished 2 rakats, you got up and you started the Fatiha of your third rakat. Okay? Then you have a nosebleed. What do? You go and wash it off, make wudu without speaking, and come back without doing excess moves and build from where you left off. That's the picture there. Now, some element of this is Imam Shafi's original position. Imam Shafi's original position was, yes, if you break your wudu, you can make wudu and just build from where you left off. You don't start from scratch. Imam Shafi eventually rejected that opinion. He said, no, that's not right. He said, that's not right, because that would mean a part of the prayer doesn't have purity, and the prayer does not accept it without purity. So Imam Shafi's final position was, no, you cannot do that. If you break wudu in the middle of the prayer, khalas, you have to go make wudu and you're going to start praying from scratch. Right? And so again, I want to find out the details of this. Where do I find that? Who took that position on and found out the details? The Hanafis. Go to the Hanafis and say, yeah, what does it mean when you can break your wudu and keep going? I want the details of this stuff. You're going to find it with the Hanafis. They're going to refine that thing. Here it's just nebulous and kind of loose, like, oh, what's going on? Right? So it says, Malik informed us from Nafi' narrated to us that Ibn Umar had a nosebleed during the prayer. He would, without speaking, leave, do wudu, and return and continue his prayer from where he left off. Right? And notice the authorities here. Ibn Umar is a key authority for the Maliki school. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا يزيد بن عبد الله بن قصيط أنه رأى سعيد المسيب the قاضي of مدينة رعف وهو يصلي فأتى حجرة أم سلمة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأتي بوضوء فتوضأ ثم رجع فبنى على ما قد صلى. Right, same kind of thing. He says, Malik informed us from Yazid ibn Abdullah ibn Qusayt, narrated to us that he saw Sa'id ibn Musayyib having a nosebleed while he was praying. So he came to the room of Salama. Why is he going to some lady's house in the middle of the prayer?
Is it the nearest?
Right. Where were the houses of the Prophet Sallallahu?
Adjacent to the
Good.
masjid?
Was she even there then? No. So what happened is the Prophet Sallallahu, when the Prophet Sallallahu was alive, I mean, he is kind of alive in the sense, in another sense, but in the sense that he was alive in our world, there was the mimbar place, the mimbar, which is there, that same place in Medina right now, and adjacent to it, you're going to find these rooms, that room of Aisha, the room of Salama, the room of so and so. So if you pray in the mosque today, you'll be right next to the places where the Prophet used to live, or the rooms of his wives. So the room of Salama is not that Salama is there. That's the room that used to be there. Okay? So he went to the edge of the place where people were praying, okay? And he got a bowl of water, was brought for him. He performed wudu and then went back and he built from where he left off. Okay? So notice that, the idea that he's breaking his wudu through a nosebleed and then continuing from there. وأخبرنا مالك, and so I believe as well in the Maliki school, the whole issue about building as well is specific to a nosebleed as well. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا يحيى بن سعيد and so this is Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. There was another Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, which is an Iraqi hadith scholar, right? Hadith critic. This is the Qadi of Medina, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, from Yahya ibn Musayyib, the son-in-law of Abu Huraira, right? أنه سئل عن الذي يرعف فيكثر عليه الدم فكيف يصلي قال يومئ إيماء برأسه في الصلاة. So Imam Malik was asked, so Imam Malik said, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari was informed that Sa'id ibn Musayyib was asked about how one was supposed to perform, how can you pray if you have a nosebleed? Whenever you lean forward, it becomes more. So what are you supposed to do? He said in the prayer, he should perform its movements with his head only. So you're just going to lean forward bit by bit, right? You're excused because if you were to pray properly, you would harm yourself, right? That's another issue
So
there.
in this case, he doesn't put wudu. He doesn't
You wouldn't do
take
sujood now.
wudu. No, I mean he wouldn't his wudu. He wouldn't take his wudu.
That's what it seems like.
Okay.
So it's a bit confusing then. So what if it breaks your wudu? So does having nosebleed break your wudu or not? It's not clear. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا عبد الرحمن ابن المجبر عن عبد الرحمن عمر بن الخطاب أنه رأى سالم بن عبد الله ابن عمر, this is the grandson of Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, يدخل إصبعه أصبعه, different ways of saying it, في أنفه أو إصبعيه ثم يخرجهما وفيها شيء من دم فيفتله ثم يصلي ولا يتوضأ. So Malik informed us that Abdurrahman ibn Mujabbar from ibn Abdurrahman ibn Umar ibn Khattab. So this is the son of the son of the son of Umar al-Khattab, right? So the son of the son. So the son of Umar al-Khattab, that's Abdurrahman, his son, grandson, great-grandson of Sayyidina Umar, narrating from the grandson of Ibn Umar, right? This is Salim ibn Abdullah, one of the fuqaha of Medina. He put his finger or two fingers in his nose, then take them out with some blood on them. With some blood on it, it's better to say. Pinch his nose. I'm not really sure pinch his nose. You could actually just be pinching yaftiluhu, could be just like rubbing his fingers together, and then pray without making wudu. So how does this work? Blood came out, so it makes wudu, breaks your wudu, doesn't break wudu. He says, قال محمد وبهذا كله نأخذ. أما الرعاف فإن مالك بن أنس كان لا يأخذ بذلك ويرى إذا رعف الرجل في صلاته أنه يغسل الدم ويستقبل الصلاة. فأما أبو حنيفة فإنه يقول بما روى مالك عن ابن عمر عن سعيد المسيب أنه ينصرف فيتوضأ ثم يبني على ما صلى إن لم يتكلم وهو قولنا. وأما إذا كثر رعاف على الرجل فكان إن أومأ برأسه إيماء لم يرعف وإن سجد رعف أومأ برأسه إيماء وأجزاه وإن كان يرعف كان كل حال سجد. وأما إذا أدخل الرجل إصبعه في أنفه فأخرج عليها شيئا من دم فهذا لا وضوء فيه لأنه غير سائل ولا قاطر وإنما الوضوء من الدم مما سال أو قطر وهو قول أبي حنيفة. So interesting. He says, Muhammad says, we conform to all of this. As for nosebleeds, Malik ibn Anas did not adhere to that. I.e., he's saying the Maliki say that nosebleeds do not break a wudu. Right? Now who are we going to check this with? Do I study Maliki fiqh from this book, or do I study Maliki fiqh from a book of fiqh, of Maliki fiqh? Right? So as far as I know, the nosebleeds do not break the wudu in Maliki school. So anyway, he said you don't. right? So how would Imam Malik do it? Is he says, oh look, there's conflicting evidence here. Here somebody is bleeding and he didn't do it, so therefore doesn't make wudu. Okay. And thought that that when a man got a nosebleed in his prayer, he should wash the blood and begin the prayer again. As for Abu Hanifa, and I think there's a question mark here that actually the case or not in the Maliki school. As for Abu Hanifa, he based his view on what Malik narrated from Omar. Did he do that? Did he base it on, or rather did he say that accordingly? Right? Did Imam Abu Hanifa even know what Imam Malik narrated from Ibn Omar? No. Imam Abu Hanifa has other sources. Right? Um, but he said the same kind of thing. Basically, Imam Muhammad is saying, listen, my Shaykh, Imam Abu Hanifa, has already saying what these hadiths are saying, what these quotes are saying. And here's the other evidence anyway. Right? Um, so it's exactly as Sa'id ibn Musayyib said, that he should go, do wudu, and then continue from where he left off, if he has not spoken. And that is our verdict too. I agree with him. So Imam Muhammad is saying is he saying, well, if Abu Hanifa says it's true? No, saying I agree with him. I may disagree, but here I agree with him. As for the case where the nosebleed is such that when praying with head movements only, there is no bleeding, but when prostrating it bleeds, he should use head movements only, right? So this is the same kind of idea in the Shafi school. Somebody has, for example, problem with gas, okay? So they know that if they go into sujood, gas comes out. And if they don't, then gas doesn't come out. So if they just sat down and they didn't go into sujood, then no gas would come out. And what they do is sit down, they make wudu sitting down in a position where no gas would come out, and they sit like that, and they do the ruku and the sujood as they are. Because it's more important to keep wudu than to do all the integrals of the prayer properly, right? So that's what you do there. Similar kind of things that if doing the prayer would result in breaking wudu, then don't do it. Similar kind of idea, but the Shafis would say, yeah, but nosebleeds don't break your wudu. But slightly different there. However, if he bleeds no matter what his position, then he should prostrate. And as for the instance, and so okay, what are you going to do then? So in reality, the Hanafi school now, what's happening if I have a non-stop nosebleed or non-stop urine coming out? Again, you have to study the fiqh of that, somewhat complex. And as for the instance where a finger is placed in the nose and is removed with blood on it, this does not call for wudu. So the mere fact that you put your fingers in your nose and blood comes out, that doesn't. Since the blood is neither running nor dripping, doing wudu becomes necessary only for that blood which runs or drips. How do you know that? Because the Kufan, back in Kufa, you're going to find those scholars are going to say, quoting Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, right? Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, who was like he is like the Sa'id ibn Musayyib of Kufa. He's of that same generation, but of that great time. He's a kind of the most important scholar of the circle of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He says, if blood flows, you have to make wudu. But if it doesn't flow, you don't have to make wudu. And that is the Hanafi school, right? So what we're finding here is Imam Muhammad is saying, hey, your evidence and our evidence comes to the same, well, agrees with our conclusion, albeit Imam Malik draws other conclusions from it, right? And so I believe in Maliki Hanbali school is somewhere in between. Like if you bleed a lot, it breaks your wudu. If you bleed a little bit, it doesn't. It's a similar kind of thing. They have the same thing in the Hanbali school. If you vomit a lot, it breaks your wudu. If you vomit a little, it doesn't. Okay. So anyway, are we taking the fiqh from here? No, we're not taking fiqh from here. We take fiqh from a fiqh book, right? But this is quite useful the way we see they're discussing these issues. Okay, it says Bab al-ghasli min bowl as-sabi, how to wash the urine of a child. So it says أخبرنا مالك حدثنا الزهري عن عبيد الله ابن عبد الله عن أم قيس بنت محصن أنها جاءت بابن لها صغير لم يأكل الطعام إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فوضعه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في حجره فبال على ثوبه فدعا بماء فنضح عليه ولم يغسله. But Malik informed us that Zuhri said to us from Ubaidullah ibn Abdullah that Qais bint Mihsan from her that she brought a child son of hers who had not yet eaten, i.e., he's drinking milk only. He's not eating solids yet. To the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam placed him on his lap and he urinated on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's clothes. So what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam do? He called for some water and sprinkled it and did not wash it. قال محمد قد جاءت رخصة في بول الغلام إذا كان لم يأكل الطعام وأمر بغسل بول الجارية وغسلهما جميعا أحب إلينا وهو قول أبي حنيفة. Right? He says a concession has been granted concerning the urine of a baby boy who has not yet eaten. And so there's other hadiths that mentioned, for example, the Prophet said, you sprinkle for the urine of a baby boy and you wash for the urine of a baby girl. He's just referring to it here and doesn't mention the hadith. And washing both of them is preferable to us, and this is the verdict of Abu Hanifa, may Allah show him mercy. So in the Shafi school, we say that if there's a baby boy, that basically you can just sprinkle water over the urine of a baby boy, as long as it's not dripping and as long as you cover that whole area, right? And which is slightly easier than washing, because washing is the water has to kind of flow, right? So this is just sprinkle over and that's it. It's fairly similar. أخبرنا, so we've seen Ibn Umar so far, right? Ibn Umar, Salim ibn Umar, also Az-Zuhri. These are very important people that built the Maliki school, okay? Sa'id al-Musayyib, the son-in-law of Abu Huraira, also building the Maliki school, right? Who are these people that Imam Malik is quoting, right? His teachers and his grand teachers, right? Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, etc. Now we're going to see we mentioned Urwa and Zubayr last time, right? So he says, أخبرنا هشام بن عروة عن أبيه عن عائشة رضي الله عنها أنها قالت أتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بصبي فبال على ثوبه فدعا بماء فأتبعه إياه. So he says, Malik informed us from Hisham ibn Urwa ibn Zubayr, who informed us from his father, Urwa ibn Zubayr, who informed us from his aunt, Aisha, that she said, right? So the Imam Malik, who is Imam Malik then? He is the student of the son of the nephew or the great nephew of Aisha radiallahu anha. That she said a baby boy was brought to the Prophet ﷺ and he urinated on his garment. And the same thing there. قال محمد وهذا نأخذ تتبعه إياه غسلا حتى تنقيه وهو قول أبي حنيفة. Said we accept this, we follow it up with washing until we clean it. So the Hanafis in reality say it's the same thing. You just wash it. It's basically washing, right? And this is verdict of Hanifa. So it's not really a concession for the Hanafis, right? For the Shafis, it is a concession, but slightly different. Okay, so important concept. We'll repeat this again. Imam Malik, his connection to Aisha. Aisha's role in the Maliki school is very important, right? So he's studying with Hisham ibn Urwa. So Urwa ibn Zubayr, the nephew of Aisha. And he's going to study as well with, it will tap into the fiqh of Qasim ibn Muhammad. And Muhammad is the half brother of Aisha radiallahu anha. And Qasim, his son, right? So her half nephew will grow up in his house, right? And he's going to be one of the fuqaha of Medina, the 7 fuqaha of Medina that will build the Maliki school. So again, if we understand who is around Imam Malik, you'll understand what the Maliki school is and be like, oh, that makes sense, right? And I quote this last week or the week before, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he said, if you knew what the Maliki school was, you wouldn't ask what the proof is, right? There is some hyperbole there, but that's a general picture. Similarly, if you ask what the Hanafi school is, or a Hanafi school is a distillation of the fuqaha of Kufa, some of the greatest fuqaha ever, the Sahaba and Tabi'een, makes a lot of sense to me. Right? You would not ask what is your proof. If you understand what built the Hanafi school, you would not ask the question, what's the proof? Right? And the Shafi school, you ask what is the proof because it's based on hadith. So where's the hadith to back this up? But I say, what is Imam Malik a product of? And you'll be like, okay, if he's a product of that, then anything he says is fine. If Imam Abu Hanifa is a product of that, then anything he says is fine. I don't mind. Not an issue. I don't have to question. It's not even an issue of questioning it. Inshallah, we'll come up with this inshallah next week. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhanallah wa bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك